2 years ago, I was sitting at my kitchen table, looking at a pile of things I had just bought from Target. Candles I did not need. A throw pillow to replace another throw pillow that was still perfectly fine. And a kitchen gadget still sitting in its box, just like the last kitchen gadget I bought and never even opened. Then I checked my credit card statement. That month alone, I had spent $4,100. Then I opened my savings account. It showed $812. I was earning $63,000 a year. And for the past 6 years, I had been making more than $50,000 annually. But somehow, after all that time, I had almost nothing to show for it. That same week, I came across an article about a Japanese woman named Fumiko Chiba, who had written a book about a century-old budgeting method called Kakebo. At first, the system itself did not shock me. What grabbed my attention was one small detail hidden inside the article. Chiba explained that many Japanese families had been using some form of these money habits for generations. Grandmothers taught them to mothers. Mothers taught them to daughters. And families quietly built wealth over decades using principles so simple that they almost felt too basic compared to all the complicated financial advice I had been watching on YouTube and Instagram for years. But the part that really stayed with me was this. Japan's relationship with money is almost the complete opposite of America's. In the United States, spending is celebrated. New car? Congratulations. New house? Amazing. New wardrobe? You are doing well. Wealth is shown. It is displayed. It is posted online. But in Japan, wealth is often kept quiet. Showing off money can feel tasteless. Financial restraint is not seen as suffering. It is seen as character. There is even a word connected to this mindset, sutsamashi. It means something close to being modest, reserved, and quietly respectable. In Japan, the quieter you live, the more respect you often receive. In America, if you live quietly, people usually assume you are struggling. That idea changed something in me. Over the next year, I started applying these Japanese money principles to my own life, one by one. I did not increase my income. I did not start a side hustle. I did not cancel every subscription. I did not completely stop eating out. I simply changed the mindset behind my spending. And in 12 months, my savings went from $812 to more than $19,000. Same job, same salary, same apartment, but a completely different financial operating system. This video is about that operating system. These are 10 Japanese money habits that create quiet, lasting wealth, habits most Americans have never heard of. Every single one can be used in your financial life right now, in the US, in 2026, no matter how much money you make. Some will feel practical right away. Others may challenge the way you think about money on a much deeper level than budgets, apps, or spreadsheets ever could. So let's begin. The first habit is Kakebo, the handwritten household ledger. This is the foundation of everything, and it is more than 120 years old. Kakebo was created in 1904 by Hani Motoko, Japan's first female journalist, during a time when women in Japan had very little financial independence. She designed it to help housewives take control of household spending with only 2 things: a notebook and a pen. The method is almost painfully simple. At the beginning of every month, you write down 4 things by hand. How much money is coming in, how much you need for fixed expenses, how much you want to save, and how much you have left to spend. Every single day, you write down what you spent. Then you place each purchase into one of 4 simple categories: needs, wants, culture, which includes books, learning, education, and meaningful experiences, and unexpected expenses. At the end of the month, you sit down and review everything. Then you ask yourself 3 questions. How much did I save? What went well? What can I improve next month? That is the whole system. It almost sounds too simple to work. But strangely, that is exactly why it works. Here is what makes Kakebo different from every budgeting app on your phone. When you write something by hand, your brain is forced to notice it. But when you tap a card, swipe your phone, or see a number flash on a screen, your brain barely reacts. The purchase happens too fast. There is no pause, no reflection, no emotional connection. But when you sit down at night and write, DoorDash, $42, once, something changes. Your hand sends a message to your brain that no app can send. You chose to spend $42 on food delivery. It was not a need. It was not culture. It was a want. And once you see that clearly, it becomes harder to ignore. Some Kakebo users claim it can reduce unnecessary spending by up to 35%. I did not reach 35% in my first month. But I did cut my spending by around 22%. At my income at that time, that meant I saved about $1,150 in 1 month. All from a $3 notebook. And this matters even more in America right now. Because many Americans entered 2026 with no budget at all. Among those who do budget, many rely on apps that automate everything. The problem is, automation tracks your spending, but it does not always make you aware of it. The app does the work. Your brain stays asleep. Kakebo forces your brain to wake up. And once your brain wakes up, it does not fall back asleep so easily. But there is another reason Kakebo has survived for more than a century, while most budgeting apps become popular for a few years and then disappear. It only uses 4 spending categories: needs, wants, culture, unexpected. That is it. At first, this may seem too basic. But the simplicity is not a weakness. It is the secret. Because every time you place a purchase into one of those 4 categories, you are forced to make a decision no algorithm can make for you. Was that restaurant meal truly a need? Or was it a want? Was that online course really culture? Or was it just a want wearing the mask of self-improvement? Was that Target trip necessary? Or did you walk in for paper towels and walk out with $73 worth of things you never planned to buy? These small questions create friction. And friction is powerful. Behavioral psychologists call this cognitive friction. Friction slows you down. And when you slow down, you become aware. When you become aware, your behavior starts to change. But American financial culture is built around removing friction. Tap to pay. One-click checkout. Auto-pay everything. Buy now. Pay later. Everything is designed to make spending feel effortless. And effortless spending feels convenient. But it is also dangerous. Because when spending becomes frictionless, you stop feeling the money leave your life. That is why many Americans underestimate how much they spend on subscriptions each month. It is also why impulse spending often becomes much bigger than people realize. Kakebo does the opposite. It brings friction back into your money life. And that friction is not a problem. It is the feature. My friend Danielle tried Kakebo for 6 weeks after years of using budgeting apps. She would download an app, set it up, use it for a few weeks, and then slowly abandon it. But Kakebo felt different. She told me the apps made her feel like a passive observer of her own spending. The numbers were there. The charts were there. The data was there. But she was not really processing any of it. Writing things down by hand forced her to experience each purchase twice. Once when she made the purchase. And again when she recorded it. By the 3rd week, something surprising happened. She started pausing before buying things. Before reaching for her wallet, she would mentally ask, "What category will this go in tonight?" Then another question appeared. Do I even want to write this down later? That became her filter. If the answer was no, she did not buy it. In the first month, her discretionary spending dropped by $400. The second habit is motenai, the deep shame of waste. This idea does not have a perfect English translation. And that is one reason most Americans have never truly understood it. Motenai is not just a word. It is a feeling. It is the regret you feel when something useful is wasted, thrown away, or not fully valued. In Japanese culture, wasting something is not seen as a small mistake. Whether it is food, clothing, money, time, or household items, waste carries a deeper meaning. It feels almost morally wrong. If someone throws away food that could still be eaten, or replaces an appliance that could have been repaired, the reaction is not simply, well, that is their choice. The reaction is closer to, What a waste. That is a shame. Now compare that to America. In America, waste is almost built into the system. People buy more food than they eat. They throw away clothes after a few wears. They replace phones every 2 or 3 years. They leave furniture behind when they move. And most of the time, nobody even thinks twice. When I started practicing Motenai, the first thing I did was track my food waste. For 1 week, I took a picture of everything I threw away from my fridge and pantry. And honestly, the results embarrassed me. Half a bag of spinach. Leftover rice I forgot about. Expired yogurt. A quarter of a rotisserie chicken. It did not look like much in the moment. But when I added it up, I realized I was throwing away about $40 of food every week. That is more than $2,000 a year going straight from my refrigerator into the trash. I started planning my meals around what I already had, instead of what I was craving in the moment. I stopped opening my fridge and asking, "What sounds good today?" Instead, I started asking a better question. What do I already have that needs to be used? That one small shift changed everything. I began freezing leftovers the same day, instead of lying to myself and saying, "I'll eat this tomorrow." Because most of the time, tomorrow turned into 3 days later. And 3 days later turned into the trash. I also stopped buying huge quantities just because something looked like a good deal. Bulk buying feels smart. But if half of it spoils before you can finish it, it is not saving money. It is just a slower way of throwing cash away. So I started buying smaller amounts more often. Within 3 months, my grocery spending dropped by almost 30%. Not because I was eating less, but because I was wasting less. And that is the real power of Motenai. It does not only apply to food. It changes the way you see everything you own. You repair instead of replace. You finish what you already have before buying the newer version. You look for a second use before throwing something away. You stop seeing old things as useless. And you start asking, does this still have value? In Japan, there is a beautiful tradition called kintsugi. When pottery breaks, it is not thrown away. It is repaired with gold lacquer. The crack is not hidden. It becomes part of the beauty. The damage does not reduce the object's value. It adds history to it. Now imagine applying that same idea to your financial life. The jacket that is slightly worn still keeps you warm. The phone that is not the newest model still works. The table with a scratch still holds your dinner. The car with a few years on it still gets you where you need to go. The thing that is slightly old, slightly imperfect, or slightly outdated may still be useful. It may still serve you. It may still have value. Motenai teaches you to notice that value before your hand reaches for a replacement. And once you start seeing value in what you already own, spending begins to lose some of its power over you. The third habit is hara hachi biyu, eat until you are 80% full. This idea comes from Confucian teaching and is widely practiced in Okinawa, Japan, a place known for having one of the highest numbers of centenarians in the world. The principle is simple. Stop eating when you feel about 80% satisfied. Not stuffed. Not uncomfortable. Not so full that you need to sit back and recover. Just satisfied. Most Americans are trained to eat until they feel completely full. We pile food onto large plates. We supersize meals. We order appetizers, main courses, desserts, and drinks. Then we feel pressure to finish everything because we paid for it. But hara hachi biyu is not only about food. When you apply it to money, it becomes much more powerful. It becomes a philosophy of enough. It teaches you not to fill your life to 100% capacity. Not your stomach. Not your closet. Not your budget. Not your calendar. You leave space. And that space matters. Because the remaining 20% is not deprivation. It is margin. And margin is where wealth begins. In real life, applying hara hachi biyu to money means you do not spend everything you earn. You leave part of your income untouched. For example, if you earn $4,200 a month after taxes, you live as if you only earn $3,360. The remaining $840 goes straight into savings or investments. You do not negotiate with it. You do not use it for random upgrades. You do not treat it as extra spending money. In your daily life, that money does not exist. And that is the point. Because if money is visible, it gets spent. But if it is removed first, your lifestyle adjusts around what is left. By early 2026, the personal savings rate in the United States was sitting around 4%. Only 4%. That means many people were saving just a tiny slice of what they earned. But the mindset behind Hara Hachi BU points closer to 20%. And that gap is massive. The difference between saving 4% and saving 20% is not small. It can decide whether you retire stressed or secure. On a $60,000 salary, saving 4% means putting away about $2,400 a year. Saving 20% means putting away $12,000 a year. That is not just a small improvement. That is a completely different future. Over 30 years, with an 8% average return, the difference becomes huge. Saving $2,400 a year could grow to around $293,000. Saving $12,000 a year could grow to about $1.47 million. Same income, same time, different margin. But there is a deeper meaning behind Hara Hachi BU that goes beyond savings and investment math. In Okinawa, this is not taught as a diet trick. It is not presented as a financial hack. It is taught as a form of respect. Respect for food, because you do not waste it through overconsumption. Respect for your body, because you do not overload it unnecessarily. Respect for the future, because you leave something for tomorrow instead of using everything today. And that word, respect, is what is often missing from American financial culture. We do not always respect our future selves. We trade tomorrow's security for today's comfort again and again. And most of the time, we do it without even realizing how expensive that comfort becomes. The average American carries about $6,500 in credit card debt at around 22.4% April. That is not just debt. That is borrowed comfort. It is the financial version of eating until you are 120% full, then wondering why you feel sick afterward. When you apply Hara Hachi BU to money, it becomes more than a savings strategy. It becomes self-respect. It is a quiet message to your future self. I left something for you. I did not spend it all. I thought about you before I made decisions today. And that is powerful. This is not financial advice, but think about what your life could look like if you treated 80% as your limit, not your starting point. You spend 80% of your income. You fill only 80% of your closet. You schedule only 80% of your weekend. That remaining 20% is not wasted space. It is breathing room. It is margin. It is protection. It is the space where financial strength begins to grow. Because when you have margin, life feels different. An emergency does not destroy you. It only interrupts you. An opportunity does not require debt. You can actually take it. A stressful month does not push you into panic. You have space to breathe. A woman named Carla, who works in hospital administration in Dallas, started using Hara Hachi BU in her finances 18 months ago. She calculated 80% of her take-home pay. Her monthly income was about $4,500. So she decided to live on $3,600. The remaining $900 went straight into a high-yield savings account and a Roth IRA. Some of that money earned around 4%. Some of it went toward long-term investing. In just 18 months, Carla saved and invested more than $16,000. But what she told me was interesting. The hardest part was not spending less. The hardest part was changing how she saw the number. At first, 80% felt restrictive. It felt like she was cutting herself off. But slowly, her mindset changed. She stopped seeing 80% as less. She started seeing it as enough. And once that shift happened, everything became easier. The fourth habit is Kaizen, continuous small improvement. Most Americans have heard this word in the business world. Toyota made it famous as a manufacturing philosophy. But in Japan, Kaizen is not only for factories. It can apply to almost every part of life, including money. The idea is simple. You do not try to change your entire life in one dramatic move. You improve by a small amount, again and again, over a long period of time. Not once. Not loudly. Not perfectly. Just consistently. When you apply Kaizen to your finances, it looks almost too easy. This month, you reduce your dining out spending by 10%. Not 50%. Just 10%. Next month, you increase your retirement contribution by 1%. The month after that, you cancel one subscription you barely use. Then you negotiate one bill. Then you switch one brand name product to a generic version. Then you wait before making one impulse purchase. Each change feels small, almost too small to matter. But that is exactly why it works. Because small changes do not scare your brain. They do not require extreme motivation. They do not demand a complete personality change. They simply move you in the right direction. And after 12 months of Kaizen, your financial life can look completely different from where it started. The strange part is, you barely feel the transition while it is happening. That is the hidden strength of Kaizen. It does not force you to become a new person overnight. It slowly trains you to become someone who handles money better. And there is a reason this works better than dramatic financial makeovers. It comes down to your brain. When you attempt a huge change, your brain often sees it as a threat. The amygdala, the fear center of the brain, becomes activated. That is why so many people make intense budget plans in January and abandon them by March. They cut too much, too fast. They remove every comfort at once. They try to become financially perfect overnight. And eventually, their brain pushes back. Willpower gets tired. Old habits return. The plan collapses. Kaizen avoids that trap. It moves quietly. A 1% improvement does not feel dangerous. It does not trigger the same resistance. It slips under the brain's alarm system. And because it feels manageable, you keep going. They build quietly in the background. At first, you barely notice the difference. Then one day, you look at your numbers and realize something shocking. Your savings rate has moved from 4% to 18% in a single year. And the strangest part? You cannot even point to the exact moment it happened. There was no dramatic sacrifice. No extreme budget. No painful lifestyle collapse. Just small improvements, repeated long enough to change your entire financial life. The fifth habit is Ikigai, your reason for being, applied to money. Ikigai is often translated as your reason for living. In the West, people usually talk about it as a career framework. They describe it as the place where four things meet. What you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. But in Japan, Ikigai is not only about finding the perfect career. It is much deeper than that. It is about having a purpose that gives meaning and structure to your everyday life. That purpose can be simple. Gardening, cooking for your family, teaching, volunteering, staying healthy into old age, raising children with presence and patience, living peacefully without constantly chasing more. When you apply Ikigai to money, something powerful happens. It changes your financial life in a way no spreadsheet can. Because it answers one question most budgets never ask. What is the money actually for? Most people either save without a clear purpose or spend without real intention. They save because they feel they should. Or they spend because something looks nice in the moment. But underneath it all, there is no clear direction. No deeper reason. No guiding philosophy. Ikigai gives you that direction. When you know the life you are trying to build, every purchase becomes clearer. Every dollar becomes a choice. Every spending decision becomes a vote. Either it supports the life you want, or it quietly pulls you away from it. My friend Terence discovered this when he defined his Ikigai as being fully present for his daughter's childhood without financial stress. That sentence changed the way he saw money. Before that, impulse purchases felt normal. A new jacket, a random Amazon order, a nicer car payment, another dinner out. None of it seemed serious in the moment. But once he understood his Ikigai, those purchases looked different. They were no longer just small expenses. They were obstacles. Every unnecessary purchase was taking him further away from the father he wanted to be. And that is when something surprising happened. He did not need more discipline. He did not need stronger willpower. He needed purpose. Once he had that purpose, impulse buying lost its emotional pull. The purchases did not just feel expensive anymore. They felt irrelevant. The sixth habit is wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection. This is one of Japan's most meaningful aesthetic and philosophical ideas. And it is also one of the strongest antidotes to American consumer culture. Wabi-sabi is the appreciation of things that are imperfect, temporary, and unfinished. A cracked bowl that still holds soup. A wooden table covered in small scratches from years of family dinners. A sweater with a tiny repair that reminds you how long it has been part of your life. A home that looks lived in, not staged. A life that feels real, not constantly upgraded. In America, imperfection usually becomes a reason to replace something. A scratch on your phone screen? Time for a new phone. A scuff on your shoes? Buy another pair. A couch cushion looks a little flat? Start browsing furniture stores. A laptop feels slightly old? Convince yourself you need the newest model. The consumer economy depends on one thing: your dissatisfaction with things that still work. It needs you to believe that slightly worn means useless. That older means embarrassing. That imperfect means unacceptable. But wabi-sabi challenges that belief. It invites you to look again. To see beauty in what you already own. To notice the history instead of the flaw. To value usefulness over freshness. To stop replacing things just because they no longer look brand new. And when this mindset enters your financial life, the impact can be massive. Americans spend thousands of dollars every year on things driven mostly by appearance and dissatisfaction. Clothing, furniture, decor, electronics, home upgrades, style upgrades, image upgrades. Many of these purchases are not made because something stopped working. They are made because something stopped feeling new. But imagine wabi-sabi helped you reduce that spending by just 25%. Not by becoming cheap. Not by denying yourself everything. But by keeping things longer. Repairing instead of replacing. And appreciating what you already have. That could redirect thousands of dollars every year. If even $2,375 a year was saved and invested instead, at an 8% average return over 25 years, it could grow to roughly $183,000. And all of that could come from one quiet shift. Learning to see value where you used to see imperfection. The seventh habit is usugi, the annual deep clean and financial reset. In Japan, usugi is a tradition done at the end of the year. Families clean their entire home from top to bottom. They remove things they no longer need. They clear out clutter. They let go of what no longer serves them. And they enter the new year with a cleaner space and a clearer mind. But usugi is not just spring cleaning. It is deeper than that. It is a ritual of release. A way of saying, I am not carrying this into the next year. And when you apply that same idea to money, it becomes extremely powerful. Usugi becomes an annual financial reset. Once a year, usually in December or January, you sit down and review your entire financial life. Not just your bank balance. Everything. Every subscription. Every recurring charge. Every insurance policy. Every investment account. Every debt balance. Every auto-pay. Every bill. Every financial habit you have stopped noticing. You look at all of it with fresh eyes. Then you ask, does this still serve me? If the answer is no, you cancel it. If the cost is too high, you renegotiate it. If something no longer matches your goals, you change it. And if your money is quietly leaking somewhere, you stop the leak. Most people set up financial systems once and then forget about them. That is where the danger begins. Subscriptions pile up. Insurance premiums slowly increase. Old memberships keep charging. Investment allocations drift away from the original plan. Autopay hides expenses you no longer think about. And because the money leaves quietly, you do not feel the damage month by month. But over a year, those small leaks become expensive. An annual usugi catches them before they grow. The first time I did a financial usuji, I found $318 a month in charges I had either forgotten about or no longer needed. That is $3,816 a year. Almost $4,000 was quietly leaving my account while I was not paying attention. Not because I was careless, but because I had stopped looking. And that is what usuji teaches you. A financial life does not stay clean on its own. It needs to be reviewed, clued, questioned, reset. The eighth habit is chokin, the habit of saving first. Chokin simply means savings. But in Japanese money culture, it represents more than just putting money aside. It means you save before you spend. Not after. Not at the end of the month. Not only if something is left over. The moment money enters your account, part of it immediately leaves for savings or investments. Then you live on what remains. That order matters more than most people realize. Because most Americans follow the opposite pattern. They earn. Then they spend. Then they hope there is something left to save. But usually, there is not. The Japanese chokin model flips the order. You earn. You save first. Then you spend what is left. At first, this sounds like a small difference. But it is not small. It is structural. Because when saving comes first, your lifestyle adjusts around the money that remains. But when saving comes last, your expenses expand until there is nothing left. This is the quiet trap most people fall into. If there is money available, it gets spent. A little more eating out. A slightly nicer apartment. Another subscription. A few extra Amazon orders. A better car payment. More convenience. More upgrades. More lifestyle. The money disappears, and you are left wondering where it went. There is a principle called Parkinson's Law. It says work expands to fill the time available. But the same idea applies to money. Spending expands to fill the income available. Chokin breaks that pattern. It removes the savings first, before your spending has a chance to grow around it. In the United States, the easiest version of chokin is automation. You set your savings or investment transfer to happen right after your paycheck arrives. Not a week later. Not at the end of the month. Immediately. That way, the decision is already made before your brain starts negotiating. And this is important because the people who save the most are not always the most disciplined. Often, they are simply the most automated. They built a system that saves for them before they can spend the money. They were practicing chokin without even knowing the word. Let me show you how this works in real numbers. Marcus earns $4,800 a month after taxes. Under the normal American model, he spends throughout the month and plans to save whatever is left. But in reality, nothing is ever left. His spending expands to fill his income like gas filling a room. Some months he saves a little. Some months he saves nothing. His savings rate stays around 3%, which is about $144 a month. And that only happens because a small part of his 401k is taken out before he ever sees his paycheck. Now imagine Marcus starts using chokin the morning after payday. An automatic transfer moves $960, which is 20% of his income, into a mix of his 401k, Roth IRA, and high-yield savings account. He never sees that money sitting in his checking account. So in his mind, it does not exist for spending. His new spending reality becomes $3,840 a month. At first, that feels like a limit. But within about 2 months, Marcus adjusts. Because the human brain is surprisingly flexible when the option to spend is removed. After 1 year, Marcus has saved and invested $11,520. Under his old system, he would have saved only about $1,728. Same income, same job, same city, same lifestyle. But the result is completely different. Now stretch that habit over 20 years. At an 8% average return, Marcus's chokin habit could grow to around $570,000. His old habit would grow to roughly $100,000. The difference is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is not a higher salary. It is simply the order of operations. Save first, then spend. Or spend first, then hope. That is the difference. And Japanese households have followed this order for generations. This is one reason credit card debt is much less common in Japan. Many Japanese credit cards are set up to automatically pay the full balance every month. Carrying a balance is not normal. It is not something people casually accept. In America, the pattern is very different. Nearly half of credit card holders carry a balance from month to month. And by the end of 2025, total credit card debt in the US had passed $1.28 trillion, according to the New York Federal Reserve. But here is the important part. The difference is not income. Japan's median household income is actually lower than America's. The real difference is sequence. Save first. Spend second. That is chokin. And that is why it works. The ninth habit is Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing and the art of free living. Shinrin-yoku means spending quiet, mindful time in nature. You walk slowly. You breathe. You notice the trees. You listen to the wind. You let your nervous system calm down without buying anything. It costs nothing, but it gives you something many expensive activities fail to provide: peace. And the deeper lesson behind Shinrin-yoku is what I call free living. Free living means building your happiness, rest, social life, and entertainment around things that do not require constant spending. That idea sounds simple. But in America, it is almost radical. Because in the US, leisure is often tied to money. Fun costs money. Relaxation costs money. Socializing costs money. A night out costs money. A weekend trip costs money. A movie, concert, brunch, shopping trip, or treat yourself day all come with a price tag. Without noticing it, many people begin to believe that enjoyment requires a transaction. The average American household spends around $3,000 a year on entertainment, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And that does not even include all the small spending attached to having fun. Gas, parking, snacks, drinks, new outfits, delivery food after a long day. Japan offers a different model. Walking, cooking together at home, reading, gardening, visiting parks, spending time at temples, drinking tea slowly, sitting with family, enjoying quiet routines. In this way of life, the richest moments do not need a checkout screen. They do not need a receipt. They do not need to be posted online to matter. When I started building my weekends around activities that cost nothing, something surprising happened. I went to parks. I cooked with friends at home. I visited the library. I took long walks. I sat outside without trying to turn every free hour into a paid experience. Within 3 months, my entertainment spending dropped by more than 60%. But I did not feel deprived. Actually, the quality of my weekends improved. Because I stopped confusing fun with consumption. I stopped asking, what should I buy to feel better? And started asking, what would actually make me feel present? That shift changed everything. The 10th and final habit is Hansei, honest self-reflection. And this is the habit that holds all the others together. Hansei is a Japanese practice of sincere reflection. But it is not guilt. It is not shame. It is not attacking yourself for every mistake. It is simply the courage to look clearly at your actions and ask, what did I do? What went well? What did not go well? And what will I do differently next time? In Japanese schools, children practice Hansei from a young age. It is part of the culture. You do not reflect only because you failed. You reflect because reflection is how you grow. And when you apply Hansei to money, it becomes the monthly review that completes the Kakebo system. You sit down with your notebook. You look at what you spent. You look at what you saved. Then you ask yourself 3 simple questions without judgment. Did I reach my savings goal? Which purchases gave me real value? What would I do differently next month? This small 10-minute monthly habit may be the most important one on this list. Because it is the habit that makes every other habit stronger. Motenai becomes sharper because you start noticing waste. Harahachi Biyu becomes easier because you see where you overfilled your life. Kaizen gets direction because you can clearly identify your next 1% improvement. Without Hansei, these habits stay separate. But with Hansei, they begin to work together. And once they work together, they compound. That word, compound, is where I want to end. Because every habit in this video works the same way compound interest works. Small actions, repeated consistently, over a long period of time. And eventually, they create results that feel much bigger than the effort required. A $3 notebook and 10 minutes a day does not sound like a wealth-building strategy. Leaving 20% of your plate empty does not sound like a financial plan. Finding beauty in a scratched table does not sound like investing advice. But when these small behaviors stack on top of each other, day after day, month after month, year after year, they create something powerful. Something income alone cannot create. They create a relationship with money that is calm, intentional, and sustainable. The wealthiest people I have studied are not always the flashiest people. They are not always the highest earners. I am talking about the people with deep financial security and the least financial anxiety. And most of them share one thing. They understand money at a basic but powerful level. They understand compound interest. They understand the difference between an asset and a liability. They understand that $1 saved can be more powerful than $1 earned, because it does not require more work, more stress, more taxes, or more burnout. That understanding has a name: financial literacy. And financial literacy is the soil where all these Japanese habits grow. Without it, Kikibo is just a notebook. Motenai is just a word. Chokin is just an idea you hear in a video and forget by next week. But with financial literacy, these habits become a system. A quiet system. A simple system. A boring system. But a deeply effective system. It builds wealth the same way a Japanese garden grows. Slowly. Intentionally. With every element placed for a reason. Nothing wasted. Nothing rushed. Nothing performed for attention. 2 years ago, I was the woman sitting at her kitchen table, surrounded by things she did not need. Things bought with money she should not have spent. Things that looked harmless in the moment but added up to a life full of financial stress. I had a credit card balance that made my stomach tighten every time I opened the app. And back then, I thought I needed more income. But I was wrong. I did not need a bigger paycheck first. I needed a different philosophy. I needed to understand that wealth is not only built by earning more. It is built by understanding more. The habits came after the understanding. The results came after the habits. And Japan understood this long before I did. Some of these principles are more than a century old. They have survived wars, economic crashes, natural disasters, and massive cultural change. Why? Because they work. They work because they are not built only on tactics. They are built on something deeper. Respect for money as a resource. Respect for yourself as the person responsible for that resource. And the quiet discipline to protect both. So no, you may not need a bigger paycheck to start building wealth. You may already earn enough. What you may need is much simpler. A notebook, a pen, and the willingness to honestly look at where your money is going. That is where it starts. That is where it always starts.